Hey everyone, it's Rob, and thank you for listening in today. I greatly appreciate your time as always. Today, my guest is Sara Avant Stover, a business strategist to spiritual entrepreneurial women, an author, and a certified internal family systems practitioner. After graduating Phi Beta Kappa and summa cum laude from Columbia University's all-women's Barnard College, she had a cancer scare, moved to Thailand, and embarked on a decade-long healing and spiritual odyssey throughout Asia. Since then, she's gone on to uplift tens of thousands of women worldwide. Sara has been featured in Yoga Journal, The Huffington Post, Newsweek, Natural Health, and on ABC, NBC, and CBS. She lives in Boulder, Colorado, and you can find her online at saraavantstover.com. That's SARAAVANTSTOVER.com. Our conversation is filled with thought-provoking nuggets of wisdom, so please enjoy my chat with Sara. Sara, welcome to the Leading with Genuine Care podcast. I'm so grateful for your time. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, we were just talking a second ago before we hit record, and I said it's been a long time coming. So I've just very much been looking forward to our conversation and got to learn a lot about you and excited to share this with the audience. So I like to start usually with a quote. And so I'll share the quote with you and we'll go from there. And the quote is, "Turns out the very achievement-driven perfectionism that had defined me for years had also muffled the voice of inner wisdom I needed most to guide me through my most difficult challenges and biggest opportunities for growth." Do you know who said that by chance?
That was me.
I love setting you up like that, right? So yeah, expand on that. I love that. It drew me in right away.
You know, I started doing this work 25 years ago, which is hard for me to believe. And from the very beginning, my core message, or one of my core messages, has been listen to that still small voice inside. And I know that that's not unique to me, to saying that. I know that's really the heart of the spiritual path in many ways, and that we all say it in our own different ways. But I just know from my own journey, there was so much piled on that was not me, because that's how I was raised. That's how our culture is oriented. Until I reached a point where I realized that that was harming me. And then I needed to find a way to start to peel those layers back to find the voice of truth that is mine.
Yeah.
Or that is it's the all speaking through me as me. And then over my years of an adulthood, moving through different seasons of womanhood, there's different lessons and challenges and opportunities within that process. It's like new depths that I go to.
Mm-hmm. So good. So many of our listeners are in leadership positions. They're entrepreneurs, and you do a lot of work with entrepreneurs, specifically women entrepreneurs, which we'll talk more about in a minute. But you were an entrepreneur from an early age, and I'm wondering if you can share how that kind of bug bit you, where that came from. Were you encouraged to go down this path, or what's that all about?
I don't have any role models in entrepreneurship, so I don't know where I came from. But
interesting.
Yes, even from a little girl, I started all these different kinds of businesses, making and selling candy, making and selling T-shirts and jewelry boxes, and all sorts of things. And when I graduated from college, my first year, I was teaching at an international school in Thailand. But right after that, I just went off and started working for myself. I love the freedom. I love the creativity. And I don't know, it's just kind of how I'm wired.
Interesting. No role models. It was just in you.
just in me. Yeah, I'm the only one in my family who's an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Interesting. Maybe there was a past life or something where you were some sort of business person or something.
Maybe.
It
Yes.
just came through you.
And I love, and maybe we'll talk more about this, but I love the intersection of money and business and spirituality because I
Mhm.
feel like they're all meant to go together. And that a lot of our challenges and wounding in our culture now is because those things have been split off from each other, and not just split off, but so deeply polarized.
Yeah.
And so much of the healing that I've done is really seeing them all part of the same stream.
Hmm. Yeah, I do want to come back to that because that is a important topic, and I love when money gets brought into it as well. Um, but I want to talk about early on when you were in your 20s, you had a health scare, and I want to have people get some insight into you as when you were younger. What happened, and can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Sure. Well, I mentioned I went to Thailand after college, but this health scare preceded that, and I was graduating from college in New York City as an Ivy League college, high honors, summa cum laude, Phi Beta Kappa, and I was really wanting to go abroad, and so I was applying to the Peace Corps. I specifically wanted to go to West Africa. I tentatively got a position there, but I needed to go through actually a lot of health exams in order to get the final okay. And at one of those health exams, it was just a routine visit to the gynecologist. And I found out that I had the early stages of cervical cancer and advanced cervical dysplasia. And my doctor said, under no circumstances can you go to Africa. You need to get checked every 3 months. And I was devastated because that was my plan. That was my dream. I used to do that for a couple of years. And, there's a saying, when one door closes, another door opens. Right after I found out that I couldn't go, serendipitously, I met with an old high school teacher who was going to be the headmaster at this school in Thailand. He offered me that job. But what that health scare really woke up in me was how much I've been pushing myself, how much I've been living by those voices of, you should do this, you should be that. I was running patterns of trauma from my childhood and really over exerting myself in academics, in exercise. I was anorexic and bulimic. And that was just a huge wake up call that I wasn't invincible, that there were repercussions to living this way. And that diagnosis, and then moving to Thailand and being exposed to a whole other way of life, being exposed to Buddhism, just set me on a whole new trajectory and really lay the foundation for everything that I've done since then.
Now, I might have missed this somewhere, but they said you should get checked every 3 months, but you
Yes.
go. Yeah.
So Thailand has a very good healthcare system.
Oh,
And so this former teacher from high school, I shared with him what was going on. He said Thailand has a really excellent healthcare system. You'll be able to get those checkups easily every 3 months.
mhm.
And I had a great doctor there. And I also had a great traditional Chinese medicine doctor. So the combination of those two things, I healed, within the first year.
Mhm.
Yes, that is an important piece that I left out.
Yeah, no, that's okay. And then, while because you were there for quite some time, like 9 years or something, you ended up staying. So how did that really shape your work today?
Well, I thought I would just stay for a year and just teach at that school for a year. And then I'd go back and maybe get my master's, maybe get my PhD. But after the first year, I just thought, I'm not ready to leave here yet. So I thought, okay, I'll stay a second year. And after the second year, I just thought, I'm not going anywhere. This is where I want to be. So I stayed for 9 years. And after my first year at that school, I got my yoga teaching certification. I branched off, started working for myself. I started freelance writing for various magazines in the US, yoga and spirituality magazines. And gradually my career built from there, my writing and my teaching.
Mm.
And it grew and grew until I was about 30. And then I really felt like I wanted to move back to the US. Like I had done all the growing that I could at that time in Thailand. And I came back to the US and I had this whole body of work that I developed from my own healing journey and from the things that I was teaching. And then with that, I wrote my first book.
I see.
So it's evolved from there.
Got it. Now I have a note here that you traveled the world at some point as well. Was that before you came back to the States?
That was interspersed while I was in Thailand. Because one of the things that also drew me there was how Bangkok in particular is such a hub for Southeast Asia, for all of Asia. So I regularly traveled. I would teach workshops in various places. My partner at the time, who I met when I was over there, was from Europe. And so we would spend a lot of time in Europe. And so I think I visited like 45 countries or something while I was there during those years.
And I was curious just how all that traveling and seeing all those different cultures kind of shaped maybe some of the way you think today, or, yeah.
I'm sure that it has. I mean, I think that, and I don't say this to be disparaging or condescending to Americans, but I think the tendency in America I saw in myself was that we can kind of live with blinders on.
Yeah.
Because this is such a great place to live in many, many ways. And we are isolated by oceans with a lot of the world. And so I think I was able to really just expand my mindset, my understanding of different ways to live. And I feel like it's also made me very adaptable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And has created this desire. Like, I definitely want to live abroad again at some point.
You do?
I do, yeah.
Interesting. Is that in the plans? Solidified or?
Not solidified.
It's out there.
Yeah, it's out there.
Where will you go?
I would love to live in Europe.
Okay. Any place in particular?
I definitely want to live in Paris for a year because I had actually intended to study abroad there in high school, but just with challenges that were happening in my family, I didn't end up doing that. So I have a promise to myself to fulfill on that dream of at least a year in Paris.
I love it. I love it. One of the other things I learned about you is that you were a ballerina and you still love to dance as far as I can understand. But whenever I think of ballerinas, you know better than I do for sure, because I don't know much about ballerinas, but it seems very intense and disciplined to me. And if that is true, can you talk about how that shaped you in your life today or at some point in your life, both in good ways and maybe not so good ways? And if there are not so good ways, that's okay.
Yeah. So I started dancing when I was 3, and something about it just spoke to my soul. It just felt like a really powerful way to express myself where I didn't have to use spoken words. Mm. And I've always expressed myself best, I think, through dance and through my writing. And the discipline piece, now that I'm older, whenever I take any of those strength finders tests, discipline is always one of my biggest strengths.
Interesting.
It has always come very easily and naturally for me. And like you said, there can be a shadow side to that. So as I got older with the ballet, while that kind of structure and that expression served me in many ways, the competitiveness of it did not, especially with my eating disorders. Mm. And so as I started to get older in my teens, and there was a lot of competition, the dancing would drive that more. So eventually, once I got to college, I just gave it up. I couldn't do it anymore. It had become too dark, too hard. Yeah.
At what point did it come back for you? And what does it look like for you today?
At that time, then it switched to yoga. And then yoga became kind of my embodiment outlet.
Yeah.
And then I started to circle back to dance, I would say maybe when I moved back to the States in my early 30s. And there are some dance classes here in Boulder, Colorado, where I live, that are not ballet, but they're other forms of just more free expressive dance that I do regularly. And those are great outlets for me. And then I love going to the ballet. And, at least like once a year, going to the city, going to the ballet, and then I can just experience the beauty and the magic of it. And I don't need to necessarily be the one that's doing it.
Curious around when you go to these dance classes that are more free form. I'm not sure I said that right, but what is that like, and what does that do for a person's mind and their mind-body connection?
I just love the one class that I go to in particular. There is some choreography. It's easy choreography, so It's easy to pick up. But I love just getting out of my head, and especially, as an entrepreneur, I'm in front of my computer a lot. I'm doing a lot of these types of conversations, writing a lot of things, formatting, all sorts, the whole thing. And so just to get away from it all and just move my body, listen to great music, and just let it all go it's a huge stress reliever. And it also just brings a lot of joy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you talk about what the experiences that you had professionally that led you to the work that you're doing today? In other words, so at a certain point you came back from overseas, and then, what happened from there to get you what you're doing today?
Well, in Thailand, I was there right as the yoga boom, the Western yoga boom was starting to happen in Asia. Mm-hmm. So I was able to be one of the first people to really ride that wave. And I put together these yoga teacher trainings in Asia, some of the first yoga teacher trainings, and people would come from all over the world. I had a business partner who was an early adopter to internet marketing. And so when I moved back to the States, we were still doing some of those teacher trainings in Thailand, and I would fly back to Thailand to do them. But he started coaching me. He started doing business coaching with me. And he taught me how to set up a lead magnet, freebie offer, how to create autoresponders, how to set up an online shopping cart, how to create my first online course. And so I really credit him, how to do a teleseminar back when there were teleseminars. This is like 2008, 2009. So I really credit him with helping me to get in very early on with all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. So that was a big piece. And then the other big piece was that I was building up this writing portfolio with all these magazines that I had been writing for. So that I had a platform, I had an email list, I had this writing background, and I was able to then write a proposal for my first book, which I think I got that book contract in 2010. That book came out in 2011. So I think those things were really, really pivotal for me and laid the foundation for what I'm doing now, having written now 2 more books and continue to grow my online business and teach online courses for the past 15 years, 16 years now.
Who were maybe 1 or 2 of your mentors or people that were very influential? What was this business partner, one of them, or?
He was influential in that he got me in the game.
Yeah.
Which I'm very grateful for. And I would say another one of my longtime mentors is Sarah Powers, who is one of the co-founders of something called Insight Yoga, which blends together yin and flow yoga, Buddhist meditation, and internal family systems, psycho-spiritual path. And Sarah's written a couple of books, and I assisted one of her teacher trainings when I was about 25. She was teaching at Kripalu, a yoga center in Western Mass, and I was just happened to be assisting there and got assigned to her training. And I was so struck by her. She had and she still does have a very deep practice. She had a great marriage and still does have a great marriage, and this incredible career. where she was sharing the depths of her practice and traveling the world and just doing things her way. So she was a great role model for me, and I continue to work with her and be inspired by her.
Interesting.
And then another woman named Hiro Boga, who has recently retired, but she was really one of the pioneers, I would say, in spiritual entrepreneurship and really kind of creating things from our soul, creating things from the inside out.
Mm-hmm. So that helps me come into my next question, because I'm curious, in the work that you do, where I believe you provide soulful guidance for entrepreneurs. And, what exactly is possible for entrepreneurs to allow for their souls to guide them? Because I don't think that's a very common way of describing it. I think of many other things when I think of what entrepreneurs are focused on, and it isn't their souls usually.
Well, I think a spiritual entrepreneur is a certain kind of an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And where we see our path, part of our spiritual path is expressed through business. And if we look back at like ancient India, we can see that business and spirituality, like we were talking about earlier, were interwoven. And so we're kind of returning to those roots of everything that I'm cultivating in my own practice can be shared as service through my business. And in that case, we come back to that necessity of listening to that still small voice inside. And that still small voice inside is offering a guidance for how we are to fulfill our destiny. Or like ancient Greek teachings or the work of Carl Jung talked about telos, which translates as our ultimate aim. And the only way that we can live out our telos, live out our ultimate aim, is to listen to that internal guidance. We're not going to get that from someone outside of us. We're only going to get it from inside.
Yeah.
And so I get excited about bridging that inner listening and the service and all the know-how that's needed to create a business and to navigate the world and everything that entails. And then to have it all work together and flow from the inside out.
Yeah. Maybe this is too complex of a question to ask, or for you to answer, I should say. But for many, I feel like it's siloed, or maybe business and money kind of come together, but spiritual is kind of like a separate thing. So talk a little bit how you bring that together, and maybe circling back to what you brought up earlier, about that business, money, spirituality.
Well, the source of money, the source of prosperity is the divine. And that's one of the major areas where we've been wounded in thinking that it's all external to us. But that's like, going to a movie and trying to rearrange things on the screen. It's like you have to go to the source.
Okay.
So the source of abundance is the source of existence. And the more that we can strengthen our relationship with the source of our own existence, the more that that's going to clear out these false beliefs, which then gets translated as these false outpicturings of scarcity, of lack, of limitation. So it's like constantly coming back in and healing our limiting beliefs, healing our sense of unworthiness, healing our misunderstandings about the nature of reality, and keep continuing to strengthen our relationship with our deep selves, with the source of existence. And then marrying with that business skills and strategies to then share our unique gifts in the form of service. And then it just creates this loop of giving and receiving, giving and receiving.
So talk about I'm not sure practical is the right word, but I'm just going to use it. So first of all, anyone who hears that loves that, right? That's my take on it. So now you have the practical day-to-day stuff that happens, and you're getting caught up on things. And what are the tools to bring you back to this wonderful picture that you just painted for us?
Yeah, I'm going to say it's not easy. It's not easy. So my morning practice is like my foundation for everything. So I have a morning meditation and yoga practice. And then I also like to the right of me in my office here, I have a really comfortable chair where after my yoga meditation, I sit in this chair, I light a candle, and I have a few books on a table next to that chair that help me with wealth consciousness. So things like the work of Florence Scovel or one is called The Abundance Book. It's just like this little book that has a 40-day prosperity plan, The Abundance Book, or Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, or The Science of Getting Rich. These are all old time books, but they all speak to the same thing, that the source of prosperity is the divine. And so I've read all of these through multiple times. So I just kind of like steep myself in that in the morning, even if it's just reading a page. And then I do some journaling. And I journal in a way that it's like the book Conversations with God, where I feel like I'm having a conversation with the divine.
Yeah.
What do I need to know today? What's needed now? So that I'm orienting to the day, just like that day's marching orders from what I'm supposed to do, or like the teachings in the Course in Miracles. It's like, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say, and to whom? Orienting from that place. And then I enter into my day, and the day can bring anything. And by the end of the day, I could be in a completely different state. But then I know the next morning I have the chance to reset.
Reset. Yeah. Yeah. So good. Why you work with women exclusively, correct? I'm curious, when did you make that decision and why?
It's a great question. And I never made that decision. It just made itself for me.
Fair enough. Yeah. I shouldn't have even asked it.
And there have been times where I've thought, it'd be great to just open things up and work with men too. But it's like, no, that's not what I'm supposed to do. Sure. You're talking about that receiving our divine marching orders. It's like, no, I'm here, at least right now and historically for my career, to work with women.
Yeah. Yeah. When you say right now, does that mean that could change?
It could change. I don't know. I don't see it changing, but I'm open to being surprised.
Yeah. Will you still do the work when you go to Paris?
Yes.
You will. Okay.
Yes.
Can you talk more about internal family systems for people that don't understand that?
Sure. Internal family systems, also known as IFS, it's an evidence-based psychotherapeutic model. And one of the reasons why I love it is, well, one, because I always felt this call to potentially get my master's in counseling and to have a therapist hat. But then I felt like, well, that's a whole big chunk of time and wanting to do that. But IFS, then I discovered IFS, and it really allowed me to kind of have a both and approach, because it does deeply help us to heal psychologically, and it's a way of life, and it's a spiritual practice. So it orients around us having a multiplicity of parts. Like a part of me wants to go to Paris, and a part of me wants to stay here for now. We can have conflicting things happening. And amidst that, we have an essential self. All spiritual traditions, like in Buddhism, it's like your Buddha nature. And that no matter what we experience in life, that essential self can never be damaged or destroyed. So usually what brings us to the spiritual path, or usually what brings us to a therapy room, is we have challenging parts within us and interpersonally. And so IFS helps us to work with those parts that can become extreme and overtake us, and it helps us to learn how to dial them back so that more of our essential self can lead the way more of the time.
Could you give an example, hypothetical example, of course, of somebody that not an actual person, somebody that hypothetically you're working with in business and is having a certain experience, and how this might show up to help them, release a block or something of that nature that helps them be a better person in business or in general, I guess?
Sure. Yeah, I run a year-long mastermind and mentorship circle for women entrepreneurs, where we weave IFS into the business building pieces. And so and I'd say that the biggest things that hold us back is the inner stuff. And so some of the parts that come up most commonly are parts that are afraid. Parts that are afraid, if I do that, people are going to judge me. If I do that, I'm going to get overwhelmed. If I do that, it's going to be too scary, or I doubt that I can do that. Parts that don't think it's possible. And so when we can give those parts support, we can see that that's not us that's feeling that way. Those are parts of us. And we can start to create more space inside and start to come into relationship with them. So we can tell them, look, I want to write this book. And yes, there's going to be some people who aren't going to like it. And yes, it's going to be time consuming. It might be overwhelming at times. But how can we be in relationship? How can I support you to make this less scary for you, so that you don't feel like you need to do it, that I'm the one who's doing it, not this younger part. And how can we come into relationship?
And how do you work through that with somebody?
By helping them to come into that relationship. And then, just like any relationship, it just strengthens over time. So coming back to the idea of the daily practice, it's like, you're not going to develop bicep muscles at the gym unless you go regularly. So it's the same with IFS. Like, you're not going to be able to, we say, like, unblend from these fearful parts if you don't connect with them kind of daily as you're sitting down, even to write that book, to consciously connect with those parts and see if they need anything, see how they're doing.
Yeah. You say, I believe, that you are a recovering overachiever. And I'm sure you work with many high achievers. What are some of the things that you do with them to help them manage that drive that they have in a really healthy way, but so they don't burn themselves out?
Yeah, as you say that, I realize that I'm still an overachiever.
I was actually thinking that when I was researching you. I was like,
but it's
where
in
is
a
she
different
right
way.
now?
It's in a
She's
different
doing
way.
a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, but it's coming from the inside out rather than from the outside in.
Yeah.
And it's coming from that drive of telos, that drive to fulfill my ultimate aim. And we talk about, like, to fulfill my potential as a human, as a soul.
Yeah.
And what's different now is that I take really good care of myself. And through my morning practice, through my larger rhythms of taking time off, of how I schedule my day, and working with the parts of me that were maybe pushing.
Yeah.
And that's what I help other women with too, is how can we create these rhythms in our days, in our weeks, in our months, in our years? How can we work with these parts that are maybe overachieving for them, the reasons that are going to burn you out versus the
Right.
reasons that are going to really help you to fulfill what you're here to do.
Yeah. But don't we have to hustle because someone while we're sleeping is working harder and getting ahead, and we can't allow that to happen?
Well, then we come back to the book Think and Grow Rich, for example, and it talks about if there's a science to getting rich, and it's about learning to think in a certain way.
Yeah.
And part of that is to work from a place of creation rather than competition.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for bringing the book back up, because it's interesting to me that you have these next to your chair, and it sounded like you have 4 or 5 of them. Most, I think, sounded like they were kind of old school, quote unquote, but they're classics for sure. So a couple of questions around that. First is, how do you know which one to pick up? Does one call you out? In other words, it might not even, just all of a sudden it's in your hands and you're at a page. How does that work for you in the morning?
Kind of exactly like you're saying. It's like I just kind of feel which one I'm drawn to.
Mm-hmm.
And there might be one that I'm actually rereading.
Mm-hmm.
In which case
in which
case that's the one that I'll go to. Or maybe I've like a just finished rereading one. I want to like review a section or review some pages.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll do that. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of intuitive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you advise your clients who have at some point on their journey as it relates to money, have decided that it's important that they get some things, beyond the basics, and they're earning that kind of money where they can go get those things, whatever those things are that are important to them, materialistic stuff. And maybe they're driving for more. Maybe they have goals for more of that stuff. Is that bad?
Absolutely not. One of the things that I work with women is, part of this process of creating from the inside out is really getting in touch with our desires. Because our desires are these messengers from our souls. They are these signposts. Like, if my heart is desiring this, this is part of my destiny. This is part of what I'm meant to experience and to be fulfilled. And part of life is living in the material realm. And so if there are certain things that we want to experience, that will give us pleasure, that will make our lives easier, I am all for that. And I'm also for myself and for other women, like supporting us and really putting structures in place to manage our money well, to save money, to invest money, so that we have a nice balance of stability and flow. Mm-hmm. So it's really, I think across the board, it's both and approach.
Yeah, that's so good. So are you also advising or teaching, not that you're a money manager, I don't believe you are, from what I learned, but is that part of your process?
It is.
The
yes.
latter part. And the importance of it may seem obvious, but what happens soulfully when you are saving and having a proper system for money in your life?
Well, in a business, for example, it really helps to stabilize the business. If you have at least 1 month's worth of expenses in a business savings account, it just creates this kind of feeling of an anchor. So you don't feel like you're living so close to the margin. And same in our personal lives. It helps to kind of relax that survival brain. And we can start small. The method that I use and that I teach is Profit First by Michael Michalowicz, where any dollar that comes into the business, you allocate a certain percentage of it to different things like operating expenses, owner's pay, profit, which is more like a savings account, taxes, And from owner's pay, then we can disperse it out to, percentage can go to savings or investments. So we can do this again with any amount of money coming in. And then we always have the money that we need to pay our taxes. We always have money that's going into savings. We always have money to spend in the business. We always have money to spend in our personal lives. And it just creates a sense of like order and stability that helps our nervous systems. And also money likes order, and money likes that sense of certainty of flow as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I like that you're referring to money as like it has a personality. I love that. Do people get that intuitively when you speak with them about money, or do you see new light bulbs open, new pathways being open?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's part of what happens is like really learning to come into right relationship with money.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely been a process for me, and clearing off the projections.
Yeah.
That I put on money, that we put on money, and the power dynamics that we can project onto it. And just ultimately money it's currency. It's like in currency, we have the word current, like water flowing in and out. It's like this energy of existence. It's part of the energy of the divine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's good. Can you talk about your book, Handbook for the Heartbroken, A Woman's Path from Devastation to Rebirth?
Yeah, so this is my latest book, and this chronicles serial heartbreaks that I experienced between 2016 and 2020 that span every area of my life. And so my relationships, my health and body, my money, my career, my sense of identity. And it's really aiming to expand the conversation around heartbreak, because a lot of times we just talk about heartbreak in terms of breakups and deaths,
right?
Which are very real heartbreaks. And there are many other forms of heartbreak as well. And as entrepreneurs, when we go through a challenging season of life, that really impacts how we can show up for our work, because we're the ones who are making it happen. And if we can also have heartbreaks in our work with struggles with money or struggles with our offers or struggles with our business, and those are very valid heartbreaks as well. So this book just aims to be more inclusive and to offer support for people who are moving through challenging times.
Yeah. During that time, that was fairly recent, 2016 to 2020. So you had a 4-year period of time where there were many, many heartbreaks. Yeah. During those times, did you have these practices in place already?
Yes and no. I had practices in place, but things definitely evolved more and more during that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And was that as a result of what was happening? And did something inside of you say, I've got to evolve these practices that I know are in my toolbox, for lack of a better way of saying, things that I know that are useful for me when things like this happen?
Yeah, I think kind of my practice is always evolving. And just, it's like the sayings, like when the student's ready, the teacher appears. It's like I get new influences at different times in my life. I think when I'm ready for it and when I need it. Mm-hmm. So the foundational pieces are always the same. Like the core practices that I do are the same ones that I write about in my first book, like the same ones that I started doing when I moved to Thailand. But then there's different influences or nuances that come in depending upon kind of the curriculum that I'm living in my life at that time.
Mm. New things that you notice. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. They ping you.
Exactly.
Okay. Got it. You are leading a retreat for women. at Drala Mountain Center called Entrepreneurial Women Cultivate Resilience, Rest, and Inspiration When the Going Gets Tough. So this must have a good tie-in to your book. So can you talk about what these women who might be considering coming or who are coming are going to experience with you?
Well, like I said, like when we go through these challenging periods, whether they're in our personal life or our professional lives, or usually they're intermingled in some way, we don't often have spaces to talk about them or to get support. And especially in entrepreneurship, it can be taboo to really speak openly about our struggles, whether they're financial. Well, usually financial is linked with other things, but it's all kind of muddled together. And so I want to create a really safe space where we can be real about our challenges and learn to find deeper resources. So whether it's like strengthening the wealth consciousness, whether it's regulating our nervous systems, whether it's training our mind and our emotions more, or simply just creating more space to hear our inner guidance, all of those things are only going to help us just to navigate whatever landscape we're currently in.
Yeah. Yeah. Taking place May 31st to June 2nd in a absolutely magnificent setting, just to top it all off. What else comes to mind for you that maybe I should have brought up, or maybe that just comes, just is floating around up there?
I think that this is a really exciting time to be an entrepreneur and a really exciting time to be a spiritual entrepreneur because so much ground has been paved in entrepreneurship and the world is so much more ready and open and available for this lineage of entrepreneurship to come through. And it's a really potent way that we can influence the world positively.
Yeah. I love the way you say lineage of entrepreneurship. I've never heard it said that way, but I think for somebody like me not thinking about it that way, it's really interesting. Yeah. And I happen to agree with you about this time. It seems like something's shifting.
Like when we talk about spiritual entrepreneurship, like what does that mean for you?
Much of everything you've shared, it's going inside to help your true self understand why it is that you're truly doing what you're doing and being very clear about that and okay with it and not letting these outside forces continue to drive you for reasons that you really don't know. And yeah, I mean, I think from a short answer, because I could go on with that, but that's what comes to me. Am I on track?
I'm not. I think we're all kind of co-creating this.
Yeah, we're all co-creating. I love it. Yeah. You're saying I'm not the. Yeah.
The other thing that it came up while I was hearing you say that is it's also just such a profound path of personal development.
Yeah.
Like I have grown more from this path than from anything else that I've done in my life. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
It brings me to edges.
Yes.
Intense edges regularly.
Yes. It so does. You are so right about that. And yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up because I often reflect on that, especially when I'm feeling really wiped out or just questioning everything. Like, what the heck am I doing here? And that's the edge. And I have a decision there that I have to listen deeply to in terms of what do I really want here?
Yeah.
And these are good questions in my opinion. I like it. I mean, it's hard, but I think it helps for me move closer to some sense of peace once I get through those hard times. But I even think the peace is there when I'm having some of the hard times sometimes.
Yeah, I agree.
Sara, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking time to chat with me.
Thank you. It was great to meet you, and I'm glad that we were finally able to do this.
Yes, yes. And to all the loyal listeners, I greatly appreciate you spending time with us today. And I wish you all much love and gratitude.